Hey everyone, this is Zero X Wing from runebase.org, and you're listening to the runebase.org podcast. Here on Runebase, we offer news, guides, and this podcast geared towards DeFi and the THORChain ecosystem. And on this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with the ThorLady. Anybody who's active in the THORChain ecosystem or who follows THORChain on Twitter or is in the THORChain community recognizes the ThorLady as, in my opinion, one of the best ambassadors for the THORChain community. ThorLady is not only really passionate about THORChain, but she also has a knack for identifying game-changing DeFi protocols before they pop. And she's been right on more than one occasion. And this is something that I've noticed. And so I was really looking forward to this conversation. In this conversation, ThorLady and I talk about her background and story. We talk about liquidity and what is liquidity, which leads us to a conversation about THORChain and how the ThorLady researches new projects, what criteria she looks for, and what are some of the projects that she's excited about right now. Something else that you might notice about the ThorLady just from following her on Twitter is that not only does she invest in these projects, but she also gets involved, like actively taking on like unofficial ambassador or business development roles for these protocols. And she talks about how she networks and connects with these different projects. And that's a really fascinating insight into kind of the thinking behind her approach to crypto. Last but not least, we talk about trends, some of the projects that she's excited about, things that are coming. And we talk about her portfolio spread, what she invests in and what some of her biggest holdings are. We had a fantastic conversation. This is something that was a long time coming. I think she and I had first started talking about doing a podcast episode together early, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And so it's great to finally connect with her. So hope you enjoy. For anybody out there listening, if you like what you hear, please leave us a review or a rating on YouTube or your podcast app of choice. It helps us reach more people. And again, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the inside. Peace. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with the ThorLady, one of THORChain, Twitter, crypto Twitter's most recognizable characters and faces, and in my opinion, one of the THORChain ecosystem's best ambassadors. ThorLady, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be speaking with you again.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And for anybody that is listening, ThorLady also hosts a podcast and is also one of the co-hosts, the occasional co-host of the Chi Capital podcast. I just had the pleasure of being featured on ThorLady's podcast, and now I get to return the favor. So thank you, ThorLady.
No, I actually wanted to be on your podcast first, but just the series of events recently, it turned out you were on mine first.
Yeah, and so we had a chance to finally connect with the timing and make it work. But with that, the place I love to start is learning about your background and your story. Anything you feel comfortable sharing. I'd love to hear, a bit about your background and then how you got into crypto and eventually THORChain.
Yeah, sure. I've been, working in tech for the last 10 years. And as you know, in the last 10 years, tech has changed a lot with even the introduction of smartphones and iPhone and Android. So I was initially working for a startup, for a camera related startup. And the goal was to create an experience of people so that they can share their videos. Essentially, it was supposed to be an Instagram for videos or a YouTube, but it didn't get so much traction. But, there were some learnings from that and understanding how to meet supply and create demand. Then after that, I had an opportunity to work with a top tech company. I guess I can say it now because I don't work for them anymore, but I worked for Google. And I was working as an account manager, just helping advertisers reach their potential audiences, understand their market, and how to optimize their ads. And when you join Google as an associate product marketing manager, you can rotate to different teams. So I was in payments, I was in advertising. I had an opportunity also to work at YouTube as a marketing manager. So just learning the different challenges businesses have and trying to offer them solutions with the products Google had. I think that gave me lots of experience and understanding how to lead me to where I am now with crypto.
How long did you work at Google?
Just about 7 years.
Got it. And are you in Japan now, or is that something you feel comfortable talking about?
Yes, I'm in Japan.
Cool. So 7 years, and you very recently, you've had a string of life events very recently. One, you recently gave birth to your first child, as I understand.
Yes. Have a baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was happened last year, thinking about starting a family and knowing that if I was to do this, I'd have to have a plan after leaving my job, knowing that I won't be able to return with the expectation that everything will be the same. So I think me deep diving into crypto and learning how to, increase my investments so I don't have to think about working again really helped me just prioritize and to understand DeFi in general of what it is today.
Yeah. And so we'll go back to your story of working for Google for 7 years. I know you also just recently had a career change where you left your job. Was it Google that you left recently?
Yes, I left Google, focusing on family right now. I do spend some time working with crypto with some projects and protocols, but I would say at least 90% is about just family right now.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. And it's great to hear that you have the freedom and the opportunity to do that. That's a great gift. Let's talk about how you're working at Google. You're working across all these different departments over the course of your 7-year tenure there. How did you first encounter crypto?
So yeah, I first got into crypto, I think 2014 or 2015, and it was Bitcoin. Bitcoin was making news about peer-to-peer transfer of your tokens for exchange for like goods, and I thought that was interesting. But also because I live in Japan and I had friends in other parts of the world, I thought it was more cheaper and more efficient to transfer them Bitcoin instead of like exchanging to their local currency and going through lots of hurdles of providing credentials and private information. So I thought Bitcoin was revolutionary in that sense. And I didn't pay much attention after just making a small investment. But I remember, I think it was in 2017 when all of a sudden it started to skyrocket, as you might remember.
Of course.
And during that time, there were other projects that I became interested in, like Monero and privacy. I think Ethereum was still coming out, and the concept of smart contracts was very interesting to me. Ripple and Stellar. Again, because of my personal need for transfer payments, that was interesting to me. And then the ICO era came, and a lot of people are creating tokens, meme coins, and stuff like that. And I think after that 2017, 2018 bull run that turned into like a long bear period, I kind of lost interest in crypto during that stage.
Yeah, I can track. Actually, our stories are extremely similar. I had moved to Vietnam in 2014 and I was running a software business with customers in the US but staff in Vietnam. And in 2014, 2015, I found Bitcoin as the cheapest way to send money from the US to Vietnam. And then like you in the 2017, 2018 cycle, I started trading altcoins and getting involved in ICOs. In 2018, through the bear market, I did stay involved, building different products in the space. But I also transitioned a lot of my focus back to a traditional software business for cash flow. And then eventually through 2020, 2021, as things came back to life in crypto, turned my attention back to it. So I'm curious for you, 2018 long bear cycle, you lost interest. When did you pick the thread back up again?
I think that's when Ethereum really started to launch some industry-breaking products. The first one that really comes to mind is Uniswap, and then SushiSwap. I like that concept of you can earn money by providing liquidity, but also you don't have to. I wasn't a very heavy trader. I wanted to buy tokens and I wanted it immediately at this price, and AMMs did that. So Ethereum was interesting in that sense. And then other projects in that space like borrowing and lending with Aave, I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think Aave is what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, Aave. Then it just made it clear to me that since there's a big movement away from centralized finance or centralized exchanges, and there was a need for DEXs to like bootstrap or create longevity within their protocols in terms of their finances. I really became interested in like liquidity and the transfer of tokens from people or from SEX to DEXs. And I think that's what led me to discovering THORChain.
Love it. Couple questions here. What time period was that where you kind of first had contact with THORChain?
So I read about THORChain, I think in 2019. They did an ICO, which I missed out, but I stuck with the team. I even knew the team's name before it was THORChain. Can't think of it right now, but I knew it when it was then. And I just followed the team, followed like the progress, and eventually when they made announcements that they received funding and that they were going to go ahead and build this like native cross-chain liquidity protocol, I knew I needed to somehow come up with the funds and try to invest as much as I could. And I got pretty lucky, and I got close to about, I think, 20 cents per rune.
That's amazing.
Maybe even, I think around 20 cents per rune. And you know the story, I think its all-time high was like $20 earlier this year. And I was able to take a bit of profits here and there, but most of my actual profits were from just providing liquidity on BepSwap and getting good returns from that.
That's awesome. So a bunch of questions around THORChain and its importance that we want to touch on. But first, you mentioned that your focus, you realized this importance of liquidity. Can you talk a bit about what is liquidity and define it for us and explain its significance or its importance?
Yeah, I think the best way it was explained to me, there's two ways that I think about it. One is when you go grocery shopping. When you go to grocery shopping, you need to, get your essentials. Let's say you need to get some vegetables, but your grocer doesn't have the vegetables. So that means you can't get what you want. So if you provide liquidity, so in this case, a merchandiser or like a farmer who's providing those vegetables to the grocery so that people can get their vegetables. So that means the middleman in this stage is the grocery store, but they're paying the farmer for their goods. So there should be a supply and demand there that every season, once this is like in not in a strict crypto sense, but in the vegetable sense, that every season the supply or the demands change. That, for example, in winter, you can only produce broccolis, and in summer, like you can only get like, for example, watermelons. So I feel like that's the same thing that with crypto. Once there's demand, and that there's farmers who can supply that, and then the grocers who can supply that to the market, I think that's where the money will flow. And that's how I understand liquidity.
Yeah. To summarize, and it's great to hear you use that analogy. I have used the same analogy and I just call it inventory, and so it's like a marketplace is only valuable if there's an inventory, and it can only grow and satisfy demand if there's inventory. And in a centralized exchange that's created by the order book and by market makers, in a decentralized exchange that's generally created by liquidity providers who pull crypto assets into static pools of assets that other traders can trade against. We call these liquidity pools. Can you explain the importance of like depth of liquidity pools? Like, why is it important for platforms to have deep liquidity pools, like a lot of inventory of crypto assets?
Yeah.
And another question is, why does that create a network effect? Like, why does liquidity create more liquidity?
The top issue with, I guess, shallow liquidity is the fees are quite high for most DeFi AMMs. So, for example, someone who'd like to swap about, if you have a shallow pool of, let's say, $1,000 and someone wants to swap, $800 for a token, it's gonna, again, one, it's gonna dry up the liquidity pool, and then two, the fees on that will be quite extensive. So on the opposite side of that, if you have a deeper pool, one, the fees will be cheaper, and two, then once the fees are cheaper, it will attract more people to trade and swap to that pool. And that's essentially the basics of economics. If you can extend your investment, get more for less, it's a good investment. So the deeper the pools, the cheaper the transactions will be, and the higher percentage that you will actually get what you want for what you paid for.
And that'll lead to more trading volume, which will lead to more fees generated for the liquidity providers, which will lead to more incentives for providing liquidity, which will lead to more liquidity being provided. And this is a term that was popularized, or a concept that was popularized by, I think, Andrew Kong. Is he Mechanism Capital? I forget that
so,
one.
yeah.
And he wrote about what he called the liquidity black hole. And
Right.
so the idea here is that once there's a protocol, like kind of like how Amazon or Facebook or Google kind of like aggregate all this powerful network effects around e-commerce or social or search, whichever protocols start to get this flywheel turning and start to aggregate liquidity, it'll create a lot of momentum and positive energy for that project going forward. And so that leads us to THORChain. 2019, you first heard about THORChain, you bought in at 20 cents. It sounds like you understood very early on the importance of THORChain. Can you talk a bit about that? Like what did you see in THORChain? It's clear there's a ton of amazing DeFi protocols that you've researched, but you call yourself the ThorLady. Why is that? Why is THORChain so significant to you?
I'm really impressed with, again, like what THORChain is trying to do. It's not easy, and for them to actually go for it, I say them, but it's essentially all of us too who are trying to invest in it and be part of the community. It's not easy, and there's going to be lots of challenges, especially what we witnessed earlier this, I say summer because we're in the Northern Hemisphere, but because of the hacks and there's adversary. But it's necessary for crypto space that people can swap their tokens and assets without censorship or without intermediaries. And it's non-custodial swaps, so you're in charge and full control of your assets. And for me, that's really important. I think that's why I was interested in Uniswap and SushiSwap, because they allowed that to happen on Ethereum. But my biggest gripe or biggest complaint with that was Ethereum gas prices and transaction fees were not economically where I wanted it to be. It's expensive to be trading on Ethereum throughout the day for little returns, and it's unpredictable too. You might be trading like $100 on a Monday, and later in the evening, if you're trying to trade the same $100, you're going to get a big tax on the transaction. And I thought that THORChain, doing this for all the chains, plus also trying to solve the transaction issue with synths and the speed of transactions, I thought that was like a killer product for trading and for cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I can relate. I think if you really start to learn about THORChain, people ask, now we're doing the THORGuard NFTs, and people ask if we're going to launch it on THORChain. And when I explain that, it's not a general purpose smart contract platform, it's got a single purpose, and that is to aggregate liquidity and then to build, cross-chain DeFi products on top of it. But within that, there's so much ambition, and it's such a great challenge. And it has the potential to really change how the entire crypto industry trades and interacts. Right now, such critical infrastructure in the crypto ecosystem is limited to centralized custodial exchanges, which is antithetical to the very nature of decentralized cryptocurrencies. And so it's exciting to see projects taking on this kind of holy grail of challenges.
I wanted to add quickly on that is that I've also had bad experiences with like many centralized exchanges where they would block transactions and you can't withdraw transactions, or you would have limitations on what you can withdraw and stuff like that. And I thought that was very frustrating on my part, because I just wanted to have full control of my money. But it's unfortunate that to be, I guess, transparent, but that's what's happening right now with THORChain, with the recent hacks. But I see it as a way, it's not censoring the way I'm transferring my money or my finances, but in a way it's actually protecting us or protecting other investors with interacting with the protocol right now. And I'm okay with that. It's not about censorship compared to what centralized exchanges were doing.
100%. And we can go on from there. I think some other things about it are like global inclusion. By definition, these centralized exchanges, they need to operate with permits from different jurisdictions or with licenses. And so by definition, there's no exchange that operates seamlessly across 193 countries. They have Binance US is different from
Yes.
global Binance. And so global inclusion, giving everybody in the world access to the same quality and the standard of assets and investments and currencies. There's a democratizing social aspect to that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. That's also part of the user experience that I was having frustration with, that I couldn't interact with the Japanese exchange where I would have to withdraw money or fund my wallet. And also some of the tokens that I was buying from were from American exchanges, and I had to provide more like KYC, and the formats didn't work because I have to go through the hoop of translating my documents into English, and it was just such a headache, and I felt very restricted using like centralized exchanges.
Yeah, that's something that I've told friends about DeFi. Like, in normal life, we conflate anything that has to do with financial services. So like banking, opening a bank account, sending a transfer, getting a loan. We conflate all of that with stress and headaches and paperwork and bureaucracy. Like it's a pain, it's to do any of these things. We think it's all the same. We think banking, we think pain. And it's only once you start using DeFi products. And for me, it was Anchor Protocol. And I realized, I can collateralize a loan and with a few clicks, get a stablecoin based on my, other valuable collateral assets. And I can do that with a few clicks without talking to a single person and, in a nice seamless UI. And I realized, there is a future where pain and banking are untangled. And
Right.
we can bank without pain. It was like using a Mac for the first time. We thought computing was a pain and, it would crash all the time. And then the Mac, in like the mid 2000s, just kind of wakes us up to this idea that, you can actually have computing without pain. You can have banking without pain.
Yeah, and I think too, that's why I was really heavy on Alchemix. Are you familiar with Alchemix?
I've used it, yeah. Well, why don't you talk? Let's talk a bit about Alchemix, and then we can talk about new projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love how you can't get liquidated on Alchemix.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, and I think they should talk about that more. They talk about it, but I think that's what it is. You just deposit your money as collateral, and you can withdraw your future interest. I think I've shared online that I haven't used it for big extravagant purchases like I've seen on Reddit, people buying cars and houses. I think that's interesting, but I've used it for multiple small purchases, and I think my maturation date is about 2035 because I've just used it so much. So it's, in a way, it's like kind of insurance for me that once my collateral position matures in 2035, I've just got all this DAI waiting for me to be used.
So it's kind of like a vault that you're leveraging now, and it's not costless. You're genuinely sacrificing what would otherwise be monthly yield on that stable coin, but you're just getting that front loaded, so you get that interest kind of up front. So Alchemix is one, and anybody that follows you on Twitter knows that you're a prolific evaluator and researcher of new DeFi protocols, and not just any. I'll say this, I think you more than anybody else, and we're both in Chi Capital, and so I've had the privilege of seeing some of your research unfold kind of in a private setting as well. You call things not just early, but you call things correct. I think the first times that I heard about Ohm and Olympus DAO, about Tokamak, about Terra, it's you and the small circle that we run in Chi Capital and others. And so I want to talk about each of those things, and this term DeFi 2.0 is getting tossed around. But before we do that, let's talk about your process. I know this is something that a lot of people ask you about. So first off, what's your process for research, for learning and studying new projects?
Yeah, sure. So with my experience in the startups that I did, and also in Google, one thing I really like to focus on is what's the problem this project or this protocol is trying to solve, and how are they addressing that? Because if they're just trying to make a project or protocol that's not addressing a real world problem or a mass problem, and it only satisfies a small circle of people, then I'm not interested, because I'm really for DeFi, and I really hope that people can have financial freedom for DeFi. So that's the first thing I look at. I really want to know if they're trying to understand a real world problem and if they're trying to solve that. So I've seen that with Terra, particularly with Mirror and Anchor. So Mirror means you can trade synthetic stocks without being blocked by authorities. And I think that's interesting. With Anchor, it's very efficient. You don't have to sign up papers like you would do when you have to go to a bank and provide like credit history, KYC, all the things that you need to jump through to get a loan or to create a savings account. Anchor solves that, and that's very important for DeFi. I've shared information about Olympus and TokenMac. Let's go with TokenMac first. So TokenMac is interesting because, like I shared earlier, liquidity in DeFi is important. And to incentivize or to create an experience around that with the community, the culture, I think those are important too. But essentially, the actual product itself of like liquidity lending or liquidity activation, that's what new protocols will need. I think the TokenMac is like IDO version, like initial DEX offering version 2 or version plus. I think it's just a good way for established protocols or established projects to get re-established again or to get reset up again. So I think that's why TokenMac is interesting, is that it'll revitalize communities and investors to position their liquidity where they can get better returns. And then I've mentioned OHM before. I think that was from our Chi Capital group. What OHM is trying to solve is, again, being the Federal Reserve Bank for DeFi. And they're betting on a world that people will be investing more on DeFi instead of traditional or legacy finance. And I think that's a good bet. And they're actually accomplishing that with their rebasing token and rewarding people for staying in this game theory called 3-3 that they have, which is very, very cool. And any other ones that I have in mind too are now, as you know, like cross-chain is still quite new. Maybe lots of talk about it has happened earlier this year or late last year. But now there's going to be layer 2s and cross-chain, not just multi-chain. And I see, if I'm trying to read on what the problems for cross-chain and multi-chain is, I think right now it's bridges. And THORChain is in a good position to kind of bridge between major short-tail assets or short-tail chains. But when it comes to like Solana and Terra with the wormhole, or even Ethereum and like Arbitrum and Avalanche, I think there's going to be some, friction on how to make that user experience better. Instead of changing chains, adding addresses to your mobile wallet and stuff like that, I think there might be a better solution to that. And that's what I'm keeping an eye out for. Like a chain aggregator or cross-chain aggregator, cross-chain liquidity aggregator, and a team that can deliver on that. I think that will be very, very important.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here, and all of this stems off of a lens through which you're viewing all of these different potential investments, which is what is the real world problem that they solve. Now, you mentioned some projects here and there's the problems that they solve. So Olympus DAO, Federal Reserve for DeFi, TokenMac, directed liquidity for users, Terra, synthetic stocks, borrow lending. You're keeping an eye out for like cross-chain liquidity solutions. After you find a problem and a solution, I'm sure that there's a lot of projects that you look at that say that they're solving a problem or say they have a solution to a problem. That's probably legitimate, but there's still something about it that, makes it not, you don't write about everything, I've noticed. So after you've determined that this is a problem worth solving and that there's a realistic solution here, what are some other criteria through which you vet and judge new projects? And what do you look at? I mean, are you looking at their Discord, their Twitter, their Telegram, their white paper, listening to podcasts with the founders? What does the actual research phase look like?
Yes, I guess best practices for me, and this is what I learned when I was working in a startup, is white paper. If you can get like a sort of executive summary of what they're trying to achieve and try to digest that and see if that resonates with your worldview, I think that's important. Read the white paper. If there's a Medium page, I think that's the next thing you need to go through. The Medium page usually has updates, blogs. Depends on how transparent the team is. If they've come across challenges that was not in the timeline, even understanding the timeline, I think that's something interesting too. So those are big indicators. And since it's a lot of crypto is also on Twitter and on YouTube, it's also important to see the volume of social mentions. So fortunately for me, I had experience working at an agency and also in Google. So I guess a free tool you can use is Google Trends. If you can see that a certain project is trending quite often, that means more people are talking about it, which is an indicator that people are most likely to invest or pour in some liquidity or so that's a good indicator for me as well. And with crypto, if it's not quite loud or if it doesn't resonate well on Twitter, then your product will fall upon deaf ears. And that's something projects really need to think about, is how to connect their community with their vision.
I love that, how to connect their community with their vision. And something that you've done a exceedingly great job of is penetrating these different communities and networking, positioning yourself within the THORChain community, very, very connected and respected in the THORChain community. And then you've leveraged that. You're not just investing in these projects, you're actually getting involved. I know that you're involved in Olympus DAO, you've submitted proposals. I know that you're connected with the TokiMac team, and we're actually instrumental in providing the introduction between our team at RuneBase to the TokiMac team. So now we're making TokiBase alongside of them. So thank you for that. So at what point are you reaching out, and how do you reach out? I mean, some people that might seem like magic, that you can just reach out to these project founders and develop relationships. What are you saying to them?
I guess one thing I do say, I've tried to jump on a call with most of these people to get an idea of, first of all, I've already done my research about them. I'm not going to waste their time and get them to tell me more about their product or their project. So I've already done my research as much as I can. And I'm reaching out to them because I also want to contribute in any way. And I think this is important for people who are in crypto. Contribution doesn't mean just money or time, but it also means your network. So fortunately, I've met a lot of people online through THORChain and through my real life friends. So I'm able to make connections, and that I think that will help these different teams. And I think that's one of my strengths, that working in Google and also working through the different agencies and stuff like that, I can make connections to people. And I think that's a key for projects to either gain inspiration or maybe reach new standards or see perspectives that they've never had otherwise.
And then now with Olympus DAO, with TokiMac, those are two that I know of. But what projects would you say you're actively involved in the communities?
Sure. And this is, maybe I can throw in a disclaimer that some of these
not financial advice.
Not financial advice, but I'm also either investing, and some of them I'm not investing. But a lot of the THORChain ecosystem partners are where I spend some time on Telegram or their Discord reading or just replying to messages or asking questions. The one that comes to mind right now is Broker. I think Broker is interesting in what they're trying to achieve with synths with THORChain, and then also relaying to Terra. I think it's going to be, how would I describe this? A proof of how DeFi can unite with the different communities there. Another one is XDeFi. And I really want to support them as much as I can in any capacity. I think that XDeFi will be the go-to browser extension wallet, and hopefully a mobile wallet, so people can trade freely without censorship or custodials. So those are the two big ones within the THORChain ecosystem. Then I'm very bullish for very DeFi, degen branded, very the culture of ThorSwap and THORChain is very similar, and it kind of, the audience that they command.
Yeah,
it's hard to describe, but I think ThorSwap will be a big player in the game.
Yeah, they've got a real powerful community. They've leveraged their existing position and resources to really expand their leverage. They're investing in, Chris at Grassroots, LP University, 0x Ventures. They went ahead and hired the Bull and Badgers, from from 0x Ventures. So they're definitely really doing a great job of just solidifying their position.
And then maybe the last one, I know there are lots Thor Wallet as well and Thor Belt, but I think DeFi Spot, which is kind of a retail or very consumer-facing platform built on THORChain, I think that they have an opportunity to, capture a different kind of audience and, work alongside with ThorSwap so that we can rescue more people from central exchanges.
100%. And then, of course, you're also a big supporter, I see, of ThorStarter too. So we can't forget our friends at ThorStarter.
Yes, ThorStarter. Yeah, they're doing a very important job on launching these projects with THORChain and eventually on Terra. So yeah, I think ThorStarter, and I think they're hiring right now, so their team is growing. So yeah, ThorStarter, check them out.
Yeah, listed a lot of great projects, and these are all the same projects that, this seems like, the first class, the freshman class of ThorFi, and it's clear that it's not done growing. I think, over the course of the next few years, as THORChain's liquidity pools, kick back into gear here and we start to cross 100 million, 200, 500 million, a billion in liquidity, I think more and more developers are going to recognize the value of what's really happening here with THORChain, and we'll see more and more projects being built on top of THORChain, which is exciting. So some of these projects you invested in, some of them you're advisors in, some of them, like outside of the THORChain ecosystem, Olympus DAO and TokiMac, are actually starting to it's starting to become a tribe. I think Ohm and Toki and Rune and even Terra, there's a good amount of overlap here in this little corner of the DeFi ecosystem, and the term DeFi 2.0 has started to get thrown around. Have you seen that being thrown around?
Yes, I follow Scoopy because of Alchemix, and I really liked his long thread about that the other day.
What is it? Can you explain that to us?
I think the way I understand it is that now, since DeFi has established itself with Sushi, let's say Sushi and Uniswap and other borrowing and lending protocols, and what else, leveraged protocols, what's come to attention is that a lot of liquidity is not owned by these protocols, and they're borrowed, or they're only assumed. What Olympus has done and TokiMac has done is they are flipping that model on its head and saying that protocols you can own your own liquidity as well, and you can diversify your treasury, and essentially it's like giving back or investing back into DeFi, which is interesting for me. And I think in the context of THORChain, if THORChain enables protocol owned liquidity, it'll be, again, I guess the sky's the limit. It'll be up to them on how they will use the profits from that. But yeah, I think DeFi 2.0 with protocol owned liquidity and treasuries growing their own funds, it's something exciting to watch in the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell from the THORChain treasury reports that some amount of the THORChain treasury is deposited in THORChain liquidity pools. And so THORChain, maybe THORChain is a bit ahead of its time in having some of that protocol owned liquidity. Yeah, that's exciting to see. How about NFTs? I'm curious, it seems from following you that it's not something that you seem to have a very deep expertise and focus on DeFi. You're at the cutting edge and getting involved and engaged with these DeFi projects, but you're also, there's a couple NFT projects. It looks like On One is something that you're involved in. I know that they take inspiration from Japanese pop culture. Can you talk a bit about how you look at NFTs right now?
NFTs are one of those things. I guess my introduction to NFTs was that I knew people in real life who were selling their work.
Yeah.
And I wanted to support them too. So it was a good way for me to invest in their work and in their art. And that was my entry level. I thought I was already satisfied with just supporting friends, but not just. Then the next level after that was supporting Japanese NFT artists and giving them some sort of exposure, but also, giving them, and investing in their art. But now, every summer something big happens. Like with this summer, it's called Oni, so Oni Force.
Oh, it's not on one.
Yeah, it's called Oni Force, and Oni means demon in Japanese. So Oni Force is lo-fi Japanese folklore, and I thought that was, to be honest, the first time I saw Oni Force, I thought of who was that band? They don't show their faces, and they're always character. There's 4 characters. Gorillas. Do you know Gorillas?
Oh yeah, the artists, the producers. Yeah.
Yes. So the Gorillas, one of their album art reminded me of Force. And that's
Okay,
when
yeah.
I jumped into it. It's like, okay, this is very interesting. And I read into the story. I looked into the art, and it was, for me, it was like simple. It wasn't trying to do something overly complicated. And the fact that it was the Japanese folklore, that got me into like, I want to collect this. So I'm collecting a lot of Force NFTs. And through that, I guess I'm learning more about NFT, like launch strategies. I'm very excited for your ThorGods launch strategy and your approach. I think it's so great, and I really want to again buy my ThorGods once they're available. I don't know how much I'll collect, but I want to try get at least 3 figures of ThorGods.
Ah, I love it. Thank you so much for saying that. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun building it. I think it's a project that is, it's creative, it's fun, it's rewarding, it's community driven. So our community is just super passionate and active. It really speaks to me building this project. So I feel like one of the luckiest guys in the world right now working on it. And yeah, we've loved having your support on Twitter. You were very generous to sponsor one of our trivias with an extra round of prizes. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, you guys are doing another one. So I want to sponsor like the same set of like 12 to 15 again.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that. And then we're also going to be doing a giveaway with you. So if anybody is listening and wants to get on the ThorGuards whitelist, follow the ThorLady on Twitter. Is that your Twitter username? Is it just
Yes.
the ThorLady?
Yes. And I'm thinking of a similar trivia style. Yeah, I was actually reading up on. Are you familiar with like the real life escape games?
Escape rooms, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I want to try to come up with that kind of inspiration and come up with an escape room trivia on Twitter, and maybe, I don't know, relay the traffic so that people have to answer on Discord on a certain channel, like similar to your Easter egg hunt thing. I think that was quite engaging. So yeah, I want to do it this way.
Yeah, that'll be really fun. Let us know when you get that live, and we'll help boost that. And we do have a really fun initiative that we're working on now. Actually, I can probably say it on this show because it'll either be leaked alpha or it'll be announced by the time that this podcast goes live. But we're gonna do a THORChain ecosystem-wide Easter egg hunt. So.
Oh no, it's so good.
Yeah, we're coordinating with like 10 different projects, and we're going to have them each hide an Easter egg, one on their website and one on their Discord. And we're just going to, everybody announces it all at once, and we're just going to like light the whole community on fire with this like ecosystem-wide Easter egg hunt.
Is this happening this month, or I need to make sure I'm available?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to launch it next Thursday. So the 21st, yeah.
So around your mint date.
The mint date will be the week after. Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be the week leading up to the mint date.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's fun. It's like coming up with ideas like this are like just super fun. I think it's something that we could be doing for a long time. So we look forward to building this for a while. But awesome. Yeah. So last questions here for you. Like you have been, like I said, very early and very accurate on your calls. Like, most of the things that pop up, I can think back to like, I think ThorLady called that like 6 weeks ago or something. But I'm curious, is there anything that you've been wrong about? Is there anything that you decided not to pull the trigger on that ended up, exploding, or anything that you had a lot of conviction on that didn't pan out?
Oh yeah, this happens a lot of times. That's why I always, when I do tweet about it, I say like I have FOMO about a certain project or token, and it's true. Like I wish I invested in it because I believe in what they're trying to achieve. But I also think that FOMO is good to have because for me, I don't have to invest in everything, and I don't want to blindly invest in pumps. I think that's the terminology in crypto. So that's okay. And for me, that's okay. I don't have to chase the money all the time, and I'm at peace with that. One that's still lingering. There's two actually. I can probably count more, but there's two recent ones that I wish I was involved in. And I hope that people still consider them as good investments today, even though I am not in it. One is Juno, Juno, and they're on THORChain right now. And again, do your own research, check them out. And the other one is Grow, Gro. Do your own research. This is not financial advice, but those are quite interesting projects right now. What else? What else did I miss out? I missed out on Doge, Dogecoin, SHIB, all those meme tokens. I don't know how to place Cardano, but if you were investing in Cardano like a year ago and compared to now, you'd have made a very decent profit. I never invested in Cardano. And I guess, the list goes on.
Yeah. I guess last question here. Well, not last question, but getting to the last questions here. What is your portfolio spread? Not financial advice, of course, but what does your portfolio spread look like now across majors, blue chips, altcoins, microcaps, THORChain? How's your portfolio spread?
Yeah. So like for us, we were in crypto 2017, 2018. And I held most of my coins from there. So I have a good size of like Bitcoin, Ethereum. I also have some Bitcoin Cash. I think the only one that I regret selling, I think I sold all of them, was Monero. I wish I held on to Monero, but most of those like short tail assets, I still have quite a good amount. And a lot of them are finding their way into THORChain liquidity pools. And a lot of my Ethereum has been invested in other ERC20 tokens. So I guess my top ones are Rune, Luna by Terra, Ohm by Olympus DAO, Tok by Tokamak. I have Rowan by THORChain, and Binance BNB. I got that when it was, I think, $2.
Wow.
It's about $400 now. So
that's crazy.
I've been fortunate, to just hold on to a lot of my tokens from the 2017, 2018 days.
That's incredible. Well, you'll be rewarded for your conviction, your patience, and your research and intelligence. So thank you for sharing all that with us. ThorLady, this has been a fantastic conversation. It's been a long time coming. I think you and I first initiated the idea of doing a podcast together maybe like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And so it's good to finally circle back and circle around to it. Where can people go to follow you and learn more about you?
You can just follow me on Twitter, TheThorLady. I also have a not so active YouTube account, but I have a YouTube account where I do podcasts. I also try to do just short, how-to videos on protocols I'm interested in. Eventually, I want to create more content, but let's see how that goes in the next few months.
Love it. So at TheThorLady on Twitter, you can follow her. We're going to be doing a giveaway on her Twitter of 10 whitelist passes for ThorGuard's NFTs. So you can check those out there. ThorLady, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll see you on Twitter.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Bye.